Rajesh Bhaumik, Shahnaz Begum. Okay? You start, then I am calling from there. You just start here. Now, today's session is Veera Bhattacharya. She is professor and head of Pali department in Calcutta University. So she will act as a chairperson for this session. Thank you, madam.
Okay, thank you. Now we are going to start the session. Session is the Asian Studies, Culture, Literature, Arts and History. First, I invite Professor Jyotish Nath from Tripura University to present his paper, The Rigvedic Tradition of Religious Attitudes Towards the Pretty Mundane Occupations. Please, sir.
Thank you, madam. The best regard for you and my best wishes to my fellow presenters of paper. My article, the title of my article runs thus: The Rigvedic Tradition of Religious Attitudes Towards the Pretty Mundane Occupations. My respected chairperson, if I go through line by line, it will not take much time. So I prefer to go with my article line after line, if you permit. And if it is boring, if it proves boring, you just without any hesitation give an indication to me. I shall read it. I shall mention it. I shall present it from my mind. It starts. It is well known that the Rigveda abounds in the artistic presentations of a number of imageries which were drawn from the mundane world, which would certainly have vibrated with a variety of earthly activities in the Vedic time itself. Modern Vedic scholars, however, are of the opinion that because the liturgical recitation of Rigvedic texts was to invoke a kind of religious efficacy to strengthen the power of the certain definitive gods, the aforesaid Rigvedic references to the mundane activities of human life found places in the prayer books only to express the theme of the poems in a style that belonged to the artistic composition of a wonderful literary work. It does not work. And I hope the volume of my voice will not require this machine. I want to prove myself more powerful than the machine. Now to be with my paper of the numerous representative of images of mundane life occurring now and then in many a place in the Rig Veda. Special mention may, however, be invited to the Rigvedic hymn 9.1.12, the 112th hymn of the 9th mandala. I have selected it because this hymn contains a number of references to the mundane activities, worldly activities of ordinary people. It is a unique hymn in the Rig Veda where the seer especially refers to the occupation, simple occupation of the ordinary people. Why did he do so? It was a question in my mind, and I wanted to give a I don't claim that I have given a solution, but I have tried to explain it. This is why. So, where the poet seems to be very explicit on his intention to emphasize the existence of correlation between the visible and invisible world, he therefore not only calls the petty, mundane occupations of everyday life brata in the sense of the perfect performance of one's personal function, but also intends to transfer the rule of life belonging to these earthly circumstances to the world of the God as he goes on drawing the formulation of correspondences or parallelisms to bring the remote and intangible of his religious observances into the range of human comprehensions. Then I have quoted the first verse of the hymn. It goes like this. I am not applying the Vedic formula of recitation. I am just simply reading it. But because the application of Vedic formula of recitations will take time, it goes like this: Nananam bi u no dhiyo bi bratani jananam taksha rishtim taksha rishtam rutam bhishak brahma sunnantam ichhati indraya endo parishrava. The English translation goes like this: O Somo, just as we have a variety of performances, the other ordinary people to perform a number of their personal functions. As for example, the carpenter is engaged in peeling a piece of wood, the physician finds pleasure to provide a remedy for illness, a priest lies in wait to get a sacrificer who intends to offer worship by praising Soma. To draw a parallelism, I too toil over you to extract juice from you. O Indu, please emit a stream of juice for Indra. One more aspect of this 4-verse hymn attracts attention. The poet seems confident in his conviction that the whole the nature has over man comes from the unseen power that exists within it. If he knows the correlation between the visible and the invisible world, he has the command of influencing the power, and hence his undertaking of the observance of the particular rite. This is why a variety of mundane occupations and their performers are carefully presented and given an ulterior significance. The consciousness of divine presence of the God that is Sumo, a case in point, and of the powers of the ritual technique go a great way in comprehending the directness of speech and frankness and exactitude with which the prayers to Sumo are stated and formulated. As for example, Rigveda, this hymn, the 4th verse of this hymn is an example here. It goes like this: Shepo Romananto Bhedo Bar It Monduko Soichati Indrayo Endu Parishrava. Its translation. As like the genital wants the cleft between the two hairy edges, and just as the frog longs for the water, I too Indra extract the juice from you, O Somo, emit a stream of juice for Indra. Now I conclude. In the end, it may however be concluded that the Vedic seer, drawing upon the petty mundane activities of the ordinary people as the standards of comparison for his own religious observances, had not only shown his own respectful attitudes towards the rule of life the ordinary people were generally used to, but also tried to command the unseen power of the nature to come into a range of human comprehension by way of the observance of a particular rite which had, on principle, aimed at establishing a correlation between the visible and the invisible world. The Vedic seer was true to his duty as a sociable person in his community and not a mere performer of religious observances in isolation of the worldly people around him. That's all. I have concluded my paper. Madam, I am grateful to you that you have given me an opportunity to present it before all of you.
Thank you. Dr. Parigopan, for any query, any question, any suggestions, anything you like, please ask. Okay. We go to the next candidate. Agata Das not present.
Now she is present there. She has some connection with the presentation of her paper in the screen. And that room provides it. And that she is gone there.
Okay, my work is like Dr. Prasanna Venkatesa Upadhyay. No. Then the Praveen Puralamsa. No. Janil Ranta. No. Dr. P.R. Archa. No. Dr. Jagdish Patigiri. Time 10 minutes.
Distinguished guest, I offer my thanks for giving me this opportunity. Actually, if I would present my paper through PCD or PowerPoint present, definitely it will be good. But at this present position, I am not in a position to present like this. However, I shall try to present this paper. The basic theme. The name of my paper, Relevance of Dr. Bhupen Hazarika's Musical Philosophy in Modern World. You know everybody, Dr. Bhupen Hazarika, who was he? So needless to speak about him. The multifaceted genius Dr. Bhupen Hazarika has created a world for himself in whom he attempted to observe, gain experience, and to understand all the conceivable activities of the people to discover the meaning of humanity. Hazarika's most remarkable revolutionary song is undoubtedly Andhar Katiri Nishate on the winter night 1953. Dr. Hazarika portrayed a pathetic picture of a family of two members, a mother and her son suffering from abject poverty. The child hungry, thirsty, and suffering from fever, desires milk and food. This is one of the most lengthy and heart-touching songs that Hazarika composed, which contain melodious folk songs and lullabies in his own unique style of presentation. With these songs, Dr. Hazarika not only gained admiration, but also inspired thousands and thousands of poor and familiarized mothers like Panoi to live and fight against the democracy and cruelty of this brutal world. Dr. Hazarika is a symbol of communal harmony, integrity, love, tolerance, patience, and ahimsa, non-violence. There is no place for any sort of discrimination, high or low, rich or poor, nor caste and creed in his thinking. Therefore, he respected and loved Mahatma Gandhi, the worshipper of truth and non-violence. After the post-colonial period of India, communal violence had created a horrible situation. At the time, Dr. Hazarika, as an ambassador of peace, composed and sang a very remarkable song, The song was Mahatmai Bole Hashi Ram, Ramu Rahim. Truly a realistic philosophy has been reflected in Hazarika's thinking world. He pleaded to the new young generation to create the dawn of new and thrilling journey. Dr. Hazarika relentlessly struggled against the evil of society, and he tried his best to create a new awareness for degradation of human values, morality, honesty, and dignity in society through his exceptional musical performances. Dr. Hazarika's song reflects deep involvement, wide observation, and maturity. He has explored unconventional harmonies in his compositions without going away from musical sound, and tonal quality has shown in them a deep sense of humanism. Dr. Hazarika was highly inspired by this beautiful world. It is a very difficult task to understand the definition of love as interpreted by his songs. He derived the elements of songs, metaphors, tunes, special language from the rich heritage of folklore of Northeast India and other parts of the world. Love came to his life sometime in tangible or sometimes in intangible way. His romantic songs always carry a universal appeal of love. Everyone can find a new taste from his beautiful love songs, irrespective of age at any moment of their life. Patriotism is the essence of Hazarika's songs. He is a true patriot. He has written a number of songs with patriotic themes. His love for the country has inspired him to pen numerous lyrics or brilliant pieces of patriotic work, which are sometimes not to be found in many other Indian languages in contemporary times. This pathetic situation compelled Dr. Hazarika to create an immortal song, Kato Juanor Mrityu Hul. This is a very important song. Dr. Hazarika wants to use music and lyrics as an instrument of social sense. When Assam and India faced critical problems and there was a cloud of uncertainty and misunderstanding in the sky of Assam and India, as a real patriot, Dr. Hazarika always guides the country to move forward in the right directions through his remarkable creations. Hazarika is a full-fledged democrat. His democratic ideas came first, and then only he is progressive. He has asked the people to be democratic-minded and to be vigilant in order to protect and hold accountable the democratic foundations of society. Hazarika always used his weapon songs to protest against politicians. As a freedom-loving musician, he protested the then declared emergency in 1975. Music is power. Music is empowerment. Music is very effective communicative medium of instrument for social sense. Dr. Hazarika was a true visionary. His music flows in the blood of every Assamese and Indians, and thereby he has made a permanent kingdom in their heart even after his death. People are spellbound by his music. Listening to Bhupen Hazarika once creates an uncontrollable urge to listen to live again and again, enthralled by his melodious voice. Music lovers called him music maestro. The common mass calls him the god of folk music and living legend. Dr. Hazarika's musical arts have fulfilled all the requirements of music therapy. Music is a part and parcel of our tradition and culture. Cultural heritage would become meaningless without music. If we are able to use music as a therapy, besides its own works, it would be the best use of music for us. Musical therapy can be defined as the use of musical or rhythmic interventions specially selected by a music therapist to accomplish the restoration, maintenance or improvement of social and emotional functioning, mental processing or physical health of an ardent in-order individual. Music can be used as a therapy not only on physically or mentally ill persons, but also on those persons who are stressed and irritated by their overloaded works. We use music as a therapy in the time of our work or after finishing our work. It helps us to perform our duty with more efficiency and accuracy. Now in the concluding part, I am trying to present how Dr. Hazarika's lyrics plays as a therapy. It is the music which call lead human being towards any side. Music unites people of the world into a single flow. It has no specific language or culture which can only be understood by some specific people. The cultural language of music is one of the most important means by which emotional balance can be kept us. As a result of this emotional balance, human being can survive himself from many problems, whether it is biological, emotional, psychological or social. Therefore, there is a great need of the detailed discussion and experience of music as a therapy in our society. If we are able to use music as a therapy in an extensive manner, it will be a great success for our society to calm patient in natural way. It would become the most effective and lingering method of treating a person who is either psychologically or emotionally not well. During the War of Independence of Bangladesh in 1971, thousands of people lost their lives. These incidents emotionalized and saddened Dr. Hazarika. As a result, he reflected his emotions by writing his beautiful song, Ganga Mur Ma, Padma Mur Ma, Sokulore Mur Dutidhara, Meghna Jamuna. Ganga is my mother, so is the Padma. Two streams from my eyes, Meghna Yamuna. It's the same sky and the same wind, the same breath in the two hearts, the same note as the two birds call. Two birds of my eyes, Meghna Yamuna. Don't know if it's the far or the near bank, for I am all around. I set sail in the Luit and compose weightily in the Padma. Different class of people are inspired, feel secured, be bold and courageous from Hazarika's one of the masterpiece song, Sitore Shameka Rati. Muslims is minority community in Assam and most of them reside in the shore areas. They are socially and economically called backward and most of them live below the poverty line. Through this song, Dr. Hazarika played the role of therapist and helps them to forget the sorrow and grief. Hazarika's innovative songs and music have always enhanced humanistic tone in the different status of society, irrespective of caste, creed and religion. Pratham nohoy, ditya nohoy, titiya shenir yatri ami. Not first, not second, I am the third passenger. Dr. Hazarika relentlessly struggled against the evil of society and he tried his best to create a new awareness for degradation of human values, morality, honesty and dignity in society through his exceptional musical performances. Dr. Hazarika joined politics. Really he was not fit to be a politician. He is born artist as a Ganashilpi, people's artist. He always tried to use his golden voice against exploitation, suffering of the masses through his songs. He appealed to the common people to come forward to all the Ravana devil of the society. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. It was very interesting, very nice. Before we become to know about, so So many information about Hazarika. Only she hear the song, very interesting. So many information given to the seminar. Thank you. Any question, any correction, anything?
Yes, please.
But only 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Okay.
Anyway, see, I would not ask any question. I have listened to Hazarika and I have sung Rabindra Sangeet also. And I gave a practical demonstration in Honolulu on aesthetics of Indian classical music. That is why I was interested. I wonder whether if you could explain how is it that Hazarika appealed in a particular manner. How is it that Tagore appeals in a particular manner? How is it that Hemanta Mukherjee appeals in a particular manner? How come? What is the mechanism that sound, same rag, say for example Bihar, sung by X, Y or Z, it appeals differently. Similarly, Bhairavi in the morning and Bihar in the evening. How do you explain this change in the behavior? Do you know the mechanism of how music or a musical sound appeals to each individual in a different manner? That is what my precise inquiry is. I know, you see, if I can produce 3 sounds here and ask you which one appeals to you, but if I ask you why, can you answer it? Because the answer lies in physics. So the physics and philosophy of music is a very interesting domain, and if the chairperson permits, I can do this experiment in 1.5 minutes. Would you like to? You see, I will produce 3 types of sounds, and you will tell me which one you like the most. Okay? One is number 1. Record it in your mind. This is first type of sound. Second is, I recite a few lines, and you simply record that sound, and this compare the two. শ্রাবণের ধারার মতো পড়ুক ঝরে তোমারই সুরটি আমার মুখের পরে বুকের পরে শ্রাবণের ধারার মতো পড়ুক ঝরে। Now this sound is different from that sound. Now these lines I will rather sing and produce a third type of sound, and you will tell me honestly which of the 3 you like the most, right? শ্রাবণের ধারার মতো পড়ুক ঝরে তোমারই সুরটি আমার মুখের পরে বুকের পরে শ্রাবণের ধারার মতো পড়ুক ঝরে। Now tell me honestly, which of these 3 sounds you like the most? First, second, and the last.
There may be different.
That is obvious.
But what is the mechanism? Well, that will need at least 150 minutes lecture, which I know this is not the time or place. Maybe I have to give another lecture. But for your information, I have come across a book which explains not only the physics but the philosophy of music, including Bhupen Hazarika's. And this book has been published. Yesterday also I showed this book by Sastha Sahitya Mandal, Connaught Place, New Delhi. The writer is some Dr. Richa Verma. I have gone through this book. It contains both the physics and philosophy of Indian classical music as a gateway to salvation. The summum bonum of Indian classical music is Mukti Dayakam Natu Ranjakam. The Ranjakam entertainment is only a byproduct. The main aim of Hazarika's music was self-realization. That was perhaps the main theme.
Actually, Dr. Hazarika has a unique style of presentation.
Yeah. Anybody who wants, he can have. I have copy given to me by the publishers.
Professor Goswami, you are gifted with some qualities of singing,
Communicative skills.
But who are not so gifted, what they will do?
Okay, now I invite Narayan Dr. Mishra, who is present here. Yeah.
एतद्देश प्रसूतस्य सकाशादग्रजन्मनः स्वं स्वं चरित्रं शिक्षेरन् पृथिव्यां सर्वमानवाः इत्युक्त्या एव भारतीयायाः संस्कृतेः मूलं स्पष्टायते यत् पूर्ववर्तिभिः मानवैः स्वस्व उदात्तचरित्रमाध्यमेन कथं सामाजिकानां पुरस्सरम् एकम् आदर्शम् आचरणम् उपस्थाप्य भारतवर्षेऽस्मिन् विशिष्टमेव एकं सामाजिकं सांस्कृतिकं वा वातावरणं विनिर्मितं विनिर्मापितं च अस्याः संस्कृतेः एवंविधं महत्त्वम् अभिलक्ष्य एव भारतस्य प्रतिष्ठे द्वे संस्कृतं संस्कृतिस्तथा इति वचनं प्रथितं जातम् वस्तुतो लोकस्य अस्य सर्वं मानवाचरणम् आचरणाधृताः विविध विश्वास विषयाः तेषाम् आचरणानां विश्वास विषयाणां च इदानीं यावत् प्रचलन्ति परम्परा धार्मिक्यः मान्यताः नीतिगताः विचाराः किं वा जीवनयापन प्रक्रिया समग्रं जीवनदर्शनं वा अस्यां संस्कृतौ समाहितं भवति शनैः शनैः तावत् पठामि समयः 10 निमेषात्मकः अतैव शीघ्रं पठ्यते भारतीयायाः संस्कृतेः परिचयः ऋग्वेदादिभ्यः प्रारभ्य पुराणादिषु रामायण महाभारतादिषु अन्येषु काव्येषु भवति वस्तुतः संस्कृतिः एव मूलं भवति कस्याश्चिदपि सभ्यतायाः स्वरूपं बाह्याभूषणावृत्तं सौन्दर्य प्रदर्शक प्रवर्धक वस्तुसमम् इति निश्चेतुं शक्यते परं संस्कृतेः संस्थितिस्तु बाह्याभूषणावृत्तेन शरीरेण सह यथात्मनः उपस्थितिः तथा स्वीकर्तुं शक्यते महर्षि वाल्मीकि वेदव्यास प्रणीतयोः रामायण महाभारतयोः अस्य संस्कृति तत्त्वस्य दिग्दर्शने जाते महाकवि कालिदासेन एतस्य संस्कृति तत्त्वस्य तथाविधं वर्णनम् उपस्थापितं येन सर्वमिदं चराचरं जगत् संस्कृति तत्त्वाप्लावितं भूत्वापि नैकविधेन तदन्तर्भूते शैक्षिक तत्त्वरूपे च सहृदय समक्षं प्रकटीभवति अनेन महाकविना स्वकविकर्मणा विविधाः समाजगताः सांस्कृतिक पक्षाः पदे पदे प्रकटिताः किमधिकम् अस्याभिज्ञान शाकुन्तलं रघुवंशम् इत्यादिकं प्रकृष्टं प्रमाणम् आसु रचनासु विक्रमोर्वशीयम् इत्याख्यस्य प्रथितस्य नाटकस्य उल्लेखोऽपि नितरां संस्कृति तत्त्वोपस्थापकेषु काव्येषु कर्तुं शक्यते अत्र हि विक्रमयुतस्य पुरुरवसः उर्वश्याश्चाप्सरसः प्रेममयीं कथामाधृत्य कतिचन सांस्कृतिकं तत्त्वमपि सामान्येन संकेतेन अनेन कविकुलगुरुणा चर्चितम् अस्ति नाटकस्य आरम्भे नान्द्युपस्थापनायां संस्कृतिगतम् आध्यात्मिकं तथ्यं विवर्णयता महाकविना न केवलं स्वीयेश्वरभक्तिविषयः एव प्रदर्शितः अपि तु भारतीय आध्यात्मिकी मनोवृत्तिरपि स्पष्टतयैव संकेतिता अपि च प्रथमाङ्कस्य प्रारम्भे एव सूत्रधारस्य प्रणयिषु वा दाक्षिण्यात् अथवा सद्वस्तु पुरुष बहुमानात् शृणुत मनोभिरवहितैः क्रियाम् इमां कालिदासस्य इत्यनेन वचनेन सद्वस्तुनः सत्पुरुषस्य महिम्नः विषयो वा समाजे प्रथितो भवति इति संस्कृतिगतं सामाजिकं तथ्यं महाकवि कालिदासः उल्लेखयति ततः परं प्रजापीडन संतापात् समुद्भूतो हुताशनः राज्ञः कुलं श्रियं प्राणांश्च दग्ध्वा न निवर्तते इति वचन प्रामाण्येन तस्मान् नृपतिभिः सर्वापद्भ्यः प्रजाः अवश्यमेव रक्षणीयाः इति राजधर्म पालन विषयिणी तात्कालिकी संस्कृतिः विक्रमोर्वशीयानुसारेण कविकुलगुरुणा कालिदासेन प्रकटितम् वैतालिकोक्ति द्वारा राजा दिनकर समः किं वा देवतुल्यः तथा प्रजापालन क्रमे षष्ठो भागः प्रजासम्बद्धः तस्मै राज्ञे एव कल्पते इति द्वे सामाजिके सांस्कृतिके किं वा कुशल प्रशासन प्रेरके मते प्रकटिते भवतः राज्ञा षष्ठांशस्य आदानं प्रसिद्धमेव नात्र केवलं राजधर्मयुतमेव सांस्कृतिकं तथ्यम् अपि तु वर्णवर्णाश्रमादि विषयाणां यत्र कुत्रचित् चर्चया अन्यानि सांस्कृतिकानि तत्त्वान्यपि महाकवि कालिदासः प्रकटयति राज्ञा पुरुरवसा उर्वश्याः चिन्तनक्रमे प्रकटितेन अनेन वेदाभ्यास जडः इति पदेन वर्णाश्रम व्यवस्थायुतः समाजः इति स्पष्टायते ब्रह्मचर्याश्रम विषयद्वारा तथ्यमिदं प्रकाशितं भवति यत् बौद्धधर्मस्य प्रभूततया विस्तीर्णेऽपि न न्यूनमासीत् कथञ्चिदपि वैदिकी संस्कृतिः समाजे मतमिदं कालिदासस्य कालनिर्धारक तथ्येन संपृक्ततया एव स्वीक्रियते तथा युक्तं कालिदासकालः कालिदासीये शाकुन्तलं ते कविपुङ्गस्य श्री विक्रमार्कस्य पुरः सभायां सभासदां भिन्न मनोरुचीनां मनः समाराधयितुं प्रयुक्ताम् अतः गुप्तशासन समयः कालिदासस्य ऐतिहासिकैः अपि विचारितम् तस्मात् वैदिक बौद्ध धर्मयोः द्वयोः अपि सन्निहितयोः वैदिक संस्कृतिं प्रायशः अधिकं प्रदर्शयति महाकवि कालिदासः अयम् इत्यपि महत्त्वपूर्णमेव तथ्यं संस्कृति तथ्यानुगुणम् अतएव संभवतः कालिदासः उर्वश्यन्वेषण कर्म खिद्यमानेन पुरुरवः मुखेन वाचयति वचनमिदम् विहगेषु पंडितैषा जातिः इति। अनेन ब्राह्मण क्षत्रिय वैश्य शूद्राख्यैर्वर्णैर्विभक्तः आसीत् तदानीन्तनः समाजः इत्यपि सत्यं व्याजेन उपस्थापयति कविकुलगुरुः अयम्। एवं चतुर्षु आश्रमेषु त्रयाणाम् उपस्थापनेन कवि महाकवि कालिदासेन सामाजिक स्तरानुगुणम् आयुः अनुगुणं च जीवनं मनुष्याणाम् आसीत् इति विषयमिमं विविच्य संस्कृति तत्त्वमेव विशदीकृतम्। यद्यपि भारतीय संस्कृतौ अष्टविधो विवाहः जायते तथापि प्रामुख्येन क्षत्रियेषु राजसु वा प्रचलितोऽयं विवाहभेदः आसीत् इत्यस्य संस्कृति तत्त्वस्य प्राकट्यं विधीयते अनेन कविना। पुनरपि राज्ञः पुरुरवसः उर्वश्याः अन्वेषणकाले विविक्तखेद विषयस्य यदा स मम प्रियवयस्यः त्वयि समुत्पन्नस्य वंशकरस्य मुखं प्रेक्षिष्यते तदा त्वया भूयोऽपि मम समीपम् आगन्तव्यम् इति उर्वश्योक्त दुःखात्मक वचनस्य च प्रदर्शनाभ्यां कालिदासो गान्धर्व विवाह विषयकं सन्तोषप्रदं स्वमतं न प्रदर्श्य अवश्यमेव समाजे विवाहस्य अस्य तथाविधा स्वीकृतिः नासीत् यथा अन्येषां विवाहानाम् इत्युपस्थापयति। कामना प्रधान विषयत्वाद् विवाहस्य अस्य न्यग्भूता स्थितिः मन्यते विवाहभेदेषु इत्यपि संस्कृतिगतं महत्वपूर्णं तथ्यं प्रकाशयति अयं कविः। भारतीयायां संस्कृतौ न मानवमात्रम् अधिकृत्य एव वदामि तथा आम्राश्च सिक्ताः पितरश्च प्रीणीताः इत्येवं विविधानि उदाहरणानि प्रकृतिपरकाणि अपि सांस्कृतिकं तत्त्वं तत्र प्रकटीकरोति। पुनः भूर्जपत्र विहित लेखन कर्मोपस्थापनेन अपि तथाविधायाः संस्कृतेः परिचयः प्रददाति। राजप्रसादादीनां सौन्दर्यवर्णनेन स्थापत्यादिकलानाम् अपि तत्र वर्णनं प्राप्यते। एवमेव विश्वासाधृतानां विषयाणाम् अपि उल्लेखः बहुशः कृतः। तत्र सुखदुःखयोः क्रमेण आगमन प्रत्यागमन विषयं च पुरस्कृत्य महाकविना भारतीयं लौकिकं जीवन दर्शनमपि प्रदर्शितम्। अतः खलु भवता दिव्यरसाभिलाषिना चातकव्रतं गृहीतम् इति वचनपुरस्करेण यथा चातको मरणान्तिकामपि पीडां सोढ्वा न साधितम् अन्यज्जलं स्वीकरोति अपितु मेघवर्षण रूपाम् आशां स्वजीवनस्य सम्बलत्वेन मत्वा जीवति तद्वदेव सर्वदा आशां धृत्वा एव जीवनयापनं लोकस्य अस्य अनुभवगतं भवति इत्यपि सांस्कृतिकं तथ्यम्। यत्र कमपि असाधितं कार्यादिकं प्रत्याशापूर्णं दृष्टिकोणम् आत्मसात् क्रियते न नैराश्यं कथञ्चिदपि सुकरम् इति सांस्कृतिकं तत्त्वम् अभिव्यनक्ति कालिदासः। एवं विधमेव नैकत्र कथाप्रसंगानुसारम् अत्र नाटके सत्पुरुषस्य स्वरूपोल्लेखद्वारा अन्यत्र च अस्मिन्नेव नाटके प्रजापालनस्य साध्वीं नीतिं च अस्मत्समक्षम् आचार्यस्य पुरस्करणेन तदाधारेण सत्पुरुषाभावम् अथ अधुनातनीं नीतिं प्रजापालकानाम् अनुशील्य च कालिदासेन लक्षितः शैक्षिकः संकेतश्च सद्यः एव अस्मिन् भ्रष्टाय समाजाय नेतृवर्गाय च बहु महत्वास्पदं दृश्यते। एवमेव संस्कार प्रकृति संरक्षण नीतिगताचरण संगीतादि संबद्धं च अन्यं नैकविधं जीवन दर्शनं च अस्य विक्रमोर्वशीयम् इत्याख्यस्य प्रथित नाटकस्य आलोके प्रासंगिकता विषयः संस्कृतिगताचार विचार परंपरा मान्यता जीवन निर्वहण पद्धत्यनुसारेण किं वा सर्वसामाजिक राजनीतिक धार्मिकादि विषयावधान दिशा अथवा वर्तमाने समेषाम् एतेषां सांस्कृतिक तथ्यानाम् अनिवार्यत्वं विनिश्चित्य स्पष्टी वर्तते इति शम्।
Okay, thank you, Narayan Dr. Mishra. You are reading like a storm. No, come on, push. Okay, thank you. Any query?
Mishra Mahabhago, Kalidasa Kritam, Vikramorvurshya Natakam Adhikritta Gaveshanam Kritavan. तस्य गवेषण प्रबंधे यद्यपि केवलं कालिदासेन उल्लिखितं तत्त्वम् अधिकतया विराजते तत्र तत्तेभ्यो भगवता मिश्र महाभागेन किमिव तत्त्वम् किमिव नवीन तत्त्वम् आविष्कृतम् तस्मिन् विषये स तथा विचारं न करोति यथा कश्चन गवेषक आधिक्येन कर्तुं प्रभवति तथापि यदि स किञ्चित् अपि अत्र उपस्थापयितुं prabhavati tat sarvam nirmalang bhavishyati. What I have said in Sanskrit, I just want to translate it into English. He has presented a paper on the drama written by Kalidasa. The drama is Vikramorbashya. But he has, so far I have heard of his presentation, he has only narrated what Kalidasa had said, had mentioned in his drama. But what is his invention out of these references to Kalidasa? If he places it before you, it will be of good presentation. It will be a good presentation if he simply says before you that this new thing or new invention I have found in the drama of Kalidasa. That's all.
Okay.
Okay. He has some answer to that. You speak in Orpiosa Pakeno Bhavatam Hridayam Prakriti Kuru.
संस्कृते एव करिष्यामि। भवतां या शङ्का आसीत् समीचीना एव। वस्तुतः संस्कृतितत्त्वं मया अत्र उल्लिखितम् अस्ति। संस्कृतितत्त्वं नाम अत्र किमपि अन्वेषणं मया कर्तुं न शक्यते। अहं प्रासङ्गिकताविषये अवश्यमेव कर्तुं शक्यते स्म, तथाविधं तत्र किमपि समासीकृत्य मया लिखितमस्ति। समीचीनतया अहं प्रतिपादयिष्यामि अग्रे इति भवताम् उल्लेखः। अतएव प्रासङ्गिक अस्मिन् विषये के एतद् विषये के अन्यस्मिन् प्रबन्धे अस्य वैशिष्ट्यस्य प्रतिपादनं करोति तत् इदं गवेषणं सुमहत् भविष्यति। समीचीनं। Madam, I have concluded what I go intended to say. Thank you.
Okay. Now I am going to the next. Next candidate is Babita Sharma. Is present? No. Babita? No. Then Dr. Rajesh Bhumi from Tripura University.
I don't find him.
Then Shahanaz Begum. Yeah. Please change your paper.
What is her
Ancient India interpreting modern global melody, the study of Jhumpa Lahiri, interpreter of melody.
Thank you very much for offering the scope to present a paper before all the scholars from diverse fields. I expect that though this is a constellation of scholars from diverse disciplines, but I can hope that Jhumpa Lahiri has become a household name for all Indians because she has grabbed the most, she is the first Indian to grab the most coveted Pulitzer Prize for fiction for her debut collection of stories that is called Interpreter of Maladies in 2000. Okay, so as she is a second generation Indian American national, means her family has migrated from India to America and they're residing over there. So most of her writings focuses on the lives of the Indian American and all the issues that are related to their life. But incidentally, the title story of the collection, Interpreter of Maladies, has some kind of relation with the Indian background. And it just suits the first area of the seminar, that is Ancient Indian Wisdom and the Modern World. Okay, so I'm not going into the detailed reading of the whole paper. I'm just skipping and I'm going to read some relevant portion so that you can get a comprehensive idea of what I am trying to contain or what I am trying to argue. But before that, I have to speak a little, in nutshell, what the story is about. The story is about a second generation Bengali American family that consists of Mr. Raj Das, his wife Meena Das, and their 3 children, Ronnie, Bobby and Tina, and they are on a visit to Konark Temple, Odisha. And that's the story. Here the interpreter of maladies, the tour guide Mr. Kapasi, he is a guide. At the same time, in the weekdays, he works as a translator, means interpreter to a doctor. The doctor is Oriya, but he has some Gujarati patients, but he cannot understand. Since he cannot understand Gujarati, Mr. Kapasi acts as an interpreter between the patients and the doctor. Okay, so from the very beginning, Mr. Kapasi was watching the family because there are many kinds of incongruities about the family. They look like Indian, but they're dressed in American way of dressing. So all these things, and from the beginning, Mr. Kapasi can understand, or even the readers can also understand that the woman means there is some kind of malady. Malady means disease, ailment. Okay, there is some kind of malady that the woman, Mrs. Das, is suffering. Because of that malady, she cannot participate in the family life. She is she is not at all caring to her children, to her husband, kind of thing. And when Mr. Kapasi tells them about his role as an interpreter, but since Mr. Kapasi is just the translator of language, there is a pun about the word interpreter. It means translation. It also means someone who interpreter also means someone who means explain something. Literally it means translation. Again, it also means interpretation. But Mr. Kapasi works as a translator, but Mrs. Das takes him as an interpreter. So when they visit the temple, Mrs. Das tells him about a secret that one of her child is born out of wedlock. It was just a result of a brief sexual encounter with the friend of the husband. Okay, and because of that guilt, that she was not loyal to her husband, there is a kind of malady that she is suffering from long 8 years, and she is just suggesting she is just seeking some kind of remedy from Mr. Kapasi. But since Mr. Kapasi is just a translator, he cannot suggest any kind of remedy. But at the fag end of the story, we can see that Mrs. Das is cured of her malady. How this happens? This happens because of the local Konark Temple. So Konark Temples gives her some kind of wisdom which helps her to get rid of the malady. That part I am going to just read in brief. The selection of Konark Temple as a setting is quite significant here. The nature image employed here represents the mindscape of Mrs. Das. The barren desert-like landscape corresponds to Mrs. Das' life. This vacuity and emptiness leading to depression, schizophrenia has become recurrent and endemic issue in modern global phenomena, and it is not that easy for a person to overcome it. Despite the fact that India had a glorified past of human development regarding social, cultural, psychological and spiritual probity, the modern day India abysmally lacks the holy virtues, spiritual bliss and moral values which can be unequivocally perceived through the image of the arid Chandrabhaga river. The river has dried up. River is the source of civilization. So the drying off of the river suggests that the spirituality has dried off from the modern Indian scenario, modern Indian society. In contrast to the bleak and desolate side, the temple dedicated to the great master of life, the sun, is symbolic of life force. In ancient India, the worship of two supreme deities, the Mother Earth as the Dharitri Mata and the sun, the Dharan Devata, were very much prevalent. In Rig Veda, the sun god is regarded as the supreme lord of the universe and the prime object of life-giving energy, being the healer of diseases and bestower of desires. If you go through the official website of Konark, you will find that it is written that even before the existence of the temple, that particular place was considered as Arka Khetra, means the religious site of sun. And it is also mentioned there it is described in Puranas that even the gods like Sun and Shiva themselves had performed penance in this Arkakhetra to get rid of their sins. So this is a place where you can go and get a kind of purification of souls, purifications. You can get rid of your sins if you visit that place. It's a kind of pilgrimage. So since Mrs. Das was going there is a kind of pilgrimage. There is a kind of purification of sin is being done there. Now, there are also, this is a very controversial topic about the sculptures on the Konark temple. There very much kind of critical attention was given to the pictures, the erotic pictures on the Konark temple. Those pictures, there are pictures of entwined naked bodies making love at various positions, women clinging to the necks of men, their knees wrapped eternally around their lovers' thighs. In addition to these were assorted scenes from daily life of hunting and trading. So in ancient India, sexuality was regarded as a pious process of procreation and a part and parcel of day-to-day affairs. So there are sculptures of erotic lovemaking scenes, and there are also sculptures of trading and hunting. These are the part and parcel of our daily life. Sexuality here was celebrated, not discarded. Besides, the wheel of the temple, the great wheel in Konark temple, symbolized the wheel of life, portraying the cycle of creation, preservation and achievement of realization. So for Mrs. Das, she has created something, she is preserving, but she has not achieved that realization that it is not a sin on her part. And if it is not that grave a sin that she must fallen out of love of her life. She must participate in the family life, and life should go on. Okay. I'm just concluding. Jhumpa Lahiri is often criticized by Indian critics for depicting India in an adverse manner. To prove their claim, they highlight the other two stories set in India, where we find a discernible portrayal of seamy and squalid side of life of middle class and lower middle class Indians. But interpreter of maladies can invalidate the accusation, for the tale analyzed so far projects India and its rich ancient culture in resplendence. However, the depiction is not flat, uncomplicated or imposed. History with its fruits should flow through ages for the benefit of human beings. The discontinuity of the flow of past glory and the teachings, as implied by the quandary of the modern India, is certainly caused by a kind of disjuncture in temporal progression, creating an apparent rift among past, present and future. But the past is not exclusively past. It bears relevance to present and subsequently to future. Before the visit to the Konark temple, Mrs. Das was unsuccessfully preoccupied to interpret her past. Later during the visit, she attempts to read the text of the sculptures on the wall of the temple. Thus, a dialogic interaction takes place between the text of the ancient world and the text of Mrs. Das's past. Like a devoted Orientalist, here I have used the term Orientalist not in the sense Edward Said has used, but in the literal sense, means a devoted scholar of Orient. Like a devoted Orientalist, Lahiri here presents how ancient India's wisdom helps the modern world to get rid of its woes and maladies. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting paper, but we have no time to discuss so many elaborately. So any one question or query, 1 minute, for 1 minute, you can put one question or query.
Dear scholar, illegitimate son is illegitimate affair. Be it in India, be it in America, be it in England, be it in a human society. And your heroine or your character got some remedy when she went to visit the Konark temple. It may be an accidental or occasional matter.
Remedy. It's not
Can
accidental.
your writer Jhumpal Lahiri generalize or institutionalize this treatment for all human beings?
No.
Suppose
For
a person has possessed or has got an illegitimate child, and she suffers from a kind of sinful act, a sense of sinful act. If she is taken to the Konark temple, will that be male or female? Will that person get any remedy from the efficacy of the sun god or the influence from the sculptures that are there on the walls of this Konark temple? This is my question.
Your question is partially right. First thing is illegitimate son is illegitimate all in everywhere in the world. But I haven't mentioned all these things because of time's constraint. But if you go through the story, you will find that Mrs. Das was not an active participant at that act, physical act. She was just a recipient of the lastful activity of that friend.
Illegitimate is there.
Does that mean that Mrs. Das commits suicide?
No.
Does that mean what she will do then?
You are dragging me elsewhere. From the point of
In ancient India, this type of thing happened.
I am speaking modern world. From the point of view of law, illegitimate is always illegitimate.
If we don't get teaching from history, then what's the use of history? If we don't get teaching and wisdom from history, past, then past will be very far away. But that is not. History should continue with its fruits and wisdoms. Something has happened. Jhumpal Lahiri is not advocating or not in favor of illegitimate kind of thing. But this type of thing has happened, and how to get rid of that? We should read. We should read the text of history.
Your author does not want to cast any spell of attitude of the ancient world on the modern world. She wants to change the modern world, change the laws of modern world.
Jhumpal Lahiri has told she is just the narrator of the maladies. She is not suggesting any kind.
What is her intention? What is her motive? Does she want to change the world? Okay.
No, she is not. That means propagandist kind of writer. She has just mentioned this is happening. You can't deny that this type of thing is happening. It's happening.
But
then,
does she want to change the law of the world?
No, she is not talking about law. It's a kind of mental. It's a kind of mental stress, psychological. Yeah, it's a kind of salvation. We should get some kind of salvation. No, it's not legal thing.
It is a psychological aspect. Schizophrenia is mental and psychological
Problem.
From psychological illness, it is good.
Okay. We go to the next. We have already three candidates. Dr. Shukla, Rajneesh Shukla. Please present your paper. Paper is Prakrit Pandolipi Ek Vivechan. Rajneesh Shukla, please. Only 10 minutes because we have already any other three. 1, 2, 3. 10 minutes maximum.
Only 5 minutes.
Oh, thank you. Very glad.
वागरथाविव संपृक्तौ वागरथ प्रतिपत्तये जगतः पितरौ वंदे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ। मैं चूंकि संस्कृत का और हिंदी का विद्यार्थी, तो मैं अपना हिंदी में ही जो है जो मूल बातें हैं प्राकृत पांडुलिपियों के संबंधित तो कब से प्रारंभ हुआ है और आज उसकी क्या दशा और दिशा है, उसको हम मॉडर्न तरीके से या वैश्विक संदर्भों में कैसे हम महत्व दे करके और अपनी जो सांस्कृतिक सामग्री या सांस्कृतिक उसकी विरासत को बचाए रख सकते हैं, ये हम थोड़ी सी 2-4 मिनट में चर्चा करेंगे। मेरा शीर्षक है प्राकृत पांडुलिपियां, एक विवेचन। पेज नंबर 5 पे है, कल मेरा पेपर था। हाँ, लास्ट फर्स्ट 11 नंबर पे है, कल मैं हाँ पेज नंबर 5 पे। हाँ, क्योंकि कल मैं आ नहीं पाया था, मीटिंग था, तो इसकी वजह से। जो हमारे पास पांडुलिपियों को जानने का सबसे सुगम तरीका है वो हम शिलालेखों के माध्यम से जान सकते हैं। और भारत में जो शिलालेख हैं वो सर्वप्रथम अजमेर राजस्थान के वडली एक जगह है, वहां पे जो है भगवान महावीर का 4 पंक्तियों का ही मात्र शिलालेख है और वो ब्राह्मी लिपि में है, लिखा हुआ है वो। और उनके ये निर्वाण के कहिए या उनके जो है समाधि मरण के 84 वर्ष बाद ही लिखवाया गया है, वो पहला प्रमाण हमें मिलता है, जो शिलालेख को हम एक पांडुलिपि का एक प्राचीन संसाधन मान सकते हैं। उसके बाद हमारे समक्ष होता है ईसा पूर्व 3री शताब्दी में सम्राट अशोक के शिलालेख, जो उसने भारत के विविध स्थानों पे 14 गिरनार में, उड़ीसा के जौगढ़ में और अफगानिस्तान के बॉर्डर पे, इन जगहों पे जो है वो अपनी जो सांस्कृतिक सामग्री है उसने किस तरह से जो है इस भारतीय संस्कृति को संपूर्ण देश में फैलाया था अपने राज्य को जीत करके, उसके एक संसाधन के माध्यम से हम जानते हैं। तीसरा हमारा जो शिलालेख है वो खारवेल का है, हाथी गुम्फा शिलालेख, जो खंडगिरी उदयगिरी में है, वो भी ब्राह्मी लिपि में है, जो हमारा सबसे प्राचीन। उसके बाद जो है हमें रुद्रदामन के शिलालेख मिलते हैं, जो संस्कृत भाषा में लिखे गए हैं, लेकिन उसकी भी लिपि जो है ब्राह्मी लिपि है। उसके बाद तो शिलालेखों की एक परंपरा चली आई है कि जितने राजा और महाराजा हुए हैं उन लोगों ने अपने अपने प्रशस्तियों को जो है उस पे उकेरा है, उस पे हमारा ध्यान जो है उतना नहीं हम दे पाते हैं। लेकिन हम जो पांडुलिपियों पे आते हैं कि हमारे पास पांडुलिपियां मिलनी कब से शुरू हुई और उस पांडुलिपियों का जो है प्रकार क्या रहा है, तो सबसे पहले हम दक्षिण भारत में जो है श्रवणबेलगोला एक जगह है, वहां पे जो है हमें सोने से लिखे हुए जो है ताड़पत्र पे जो है वो 1ली शताब्दी की पांडुलिपियां मिलती हैं कि जिसमें उसमें कुछ संकेत है। और उसी पांडुलिपियों का रूप हमें मूल बिद्री है एक जगह, वहां पे श्रवणबेलगोला के ही थोड़ा पास में, वहां पे भी लाखों की संख्या में उसमें पांडुलिपियां पड़ी हैं। उसमें प्राकृत की भी हैं, संस्कृत की भी हैं, भारतीय संस्कृति के जितने भी आयाम हैं उन सबकी पांडुलिपियां पड़ी हुई हैं। तो हमारे पास जो पांडुलिपियों के लिखने के वो रहे हैं कि पहले वो ताड़पत्र पे लिखे जाते थे, उसके बाद वो भोजपत्र पे लिखे जाते थे, फिर जो राजा महाराजा है वो अलग अलग सिक्कों पे लिखवाए कि जो कभी कोई चमड़े का सिक्का चलाया, कोई तांबे के सिक्के पे, कोई सोने के सिक्के पे, फिर उसके बाद मेटल पे लिखना शुरू हुआ कि वो एक प्रशस्ति बन जाती थी। उसको भी हम जो है पांडुलिपि का रूप मानते हैं। 19वीं शताब्दी के बाद से जो है जब हमारे पास लेखन सामग्री आने लगी, उसके बाद जो हम अलग अलग कागजों पे उसको उकेरने लगे कि किन लिपियों में लिखा जाए। तो हमारे पास जो नागरी लिपि है, सबसे पुराना जो है हमें नागरी लिपि में मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट मिलते हैं, जो आज भी भारत के अनेक जगहों पे जो भंडारगार हैं उसमें गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से भी हैं और सामाजिक जो जैन समाज है, बौद्ध समाज है, हिंदू समाज है, उनके मंदिरों में, उनके स्थानागारों में, या विविध भारतीय जो प्राचीन पुस्तकालय हैं जैसे कलकत्ता में है, दिल्ली में भी है, और जोधपुर, जैसलमेर, पूना, इन सब पे बहुत बड़े बड़े लाखों की संख्या में पांडुलिपियां हमारे पास मौजूद हैं। कुछ तो प्रकाशित हो गई हैं, कुछ अप्रकाशित है। जो अप्रकाशित हैं उनको आज पढ़ने वाला कोई नहीं है, उसमें क्या लिखा हुआ है। तो मैं चाहता हूं कि जो इंडिया स्टडीज के माध्यम से कि अनेक लोग इस मैन्युस्क्रिप्टोलॉजी विषय को पढ़ें। हम लोग बहुत साहित्य वगैरह सब तो पढ़ते ही हैं, लेकिन हमें जब तक मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट पर पकड़ नहीं होगी तब तक हमारी उस संस्कृति में या उस धरोहर में क्या लिखा हुआ है हम समाज को क्या दे पाएंगे। क्योंकि बुजुर्ग लोग तो पढ़ गए, अब उन्होंने लिख करके रख दिया, उससे आगे भी हमें कुछ काम करना है या उन्हीं की बातों का पृष्ठ पेषण करके नहीं चलना है। इसी क्रम में जो है ये जो राष्ट्रीय पांडुलिपि मिशन है वो पांडुलिपियों की पूरे भारतभर में या देशों में कहां पे जो भारतीय पांडुलिपियां हैं कि जो नागरी लिपि में, देवनागरी में या रोमन में अब जो लिखा जाने लगा है कि उनका कम से कम देवनागरी हो जाए, देवनागरी होकर के रोमन हो कि उनको पढ़ा जा सके। और जो हमारे युवा विद्वान आ रहे हैं उनको प्राचीन के साथ जो 20वीं शताब्दी के विद्वान हैं अब वो बिल्कुल अपने अंतिम चरण पे हैं, उनके पास वो ज्ञान है, आज हमारे पास वो ज्ञान नहीं है। तो उन दोनों के बीच में सामंजस्य बैठा करके उन जो हमारी प्राचीन धरोहरें हैं, जो पांडुलिपियां हैं, उनको हमें कैसे सुरक्षित रखना है और उनको पढ़ करके कि जो उसमें आयुर्वेद है, संगीत है, विज्ञान है और जो विश्व स्तर पे जो बार बार डिमांड, जो अहिंसा की बात आती है, जो अनेकांत की बात आती है जैनिज्म के, उनको हम किन रूपों में कि जो हमारा 13वीं शताब्दी में जो आचार्य लिखा वो पांडुलिपि हमारे पास हैं लेकिन हम पढ़ नहीं सकते, वो प्रकाशित नहीं हो सकती। तो उनको प्रकाशन करने से पूर्व उनको पढ़ने वाले पहले तैयार करना है हमें। उनको
पहुंच चुके हैं आपकी समस्या।
जी जी
का क्या फल है?
जी जी
आप लोग तो पढ़ाते हैं
जी
तो भी प्राकृत भाषा का जैसा स्तर है, जैसी व्यवस्था है, संस्कृत की भी वैसी व्यवस्था है, ये दयनीय है। इसलिए आपके साथ हम संवेदना प्रकट करते हैं। तो क्या करें? हमारे स्टूडेंट्स लिटरेचर के प्रति आसक्त नहीं होते हैं, कोई इंटरेस्ट नहीं दिखाते हैं। He is repeating every time. This is why he is repeating.
नहीं, हमने कोई ऐसी चीज रिपीट नहीं की। हमने जो शिलालेखों के माध्यम से फिर हमारे पास वो किन किन रूपों में आया है, हमारा यानी कि आप ये हम रिपीट कर रहे हैं। ये है कि जैसे आप सीनियर पोस्ट पे हैं तो आप इन विधाओं को आगे लाने के लिए कैसे कैसे क्या प्रयास किए जा सकते हैं कि हम विश्व में कि जो हमारे पास भारत में जो पांडुलिपियां हैं, जो भारत की पांडुलिपियां विदेशों में गई हुई हैं, उनको हम यहां लेकर के कम से कम जो हमारा वैश्विक संदर्भों में पांडुलिपियों में क्या सामग्री निहित की गई है उसको हम पढ़ने का तो एक बार प्रयास करें। हम अपने लोगों को तो बता सके भाई ये चीजें हैं और उसके आधार पे जो है, तो इसके लिए हमें मैन्युस्क्रिप्टोलॉजी और पांडुलिपि के बारे में तो उनको बताना ही पड़ेगा। अकेले हमें केवल कालिदास के नाटकों से या जो अन्य साहित्य है उनको पढ़ाने से जो है, तो हमारा है कि इस विषय में भी काम होना चाहिए। धन्यवाद। तो सुधार के रास्ते तो निकालने पड़ेंगे ना, दैनिक कहने से तो काम नहीं चलेगा ना।
काम कर रहे हैं ना। हेलो, नमस्कार, मैं जैन दर्शन की विद्यार्थिनी हूँ। मेरा विषय है भाषा चिंतन की परंपरा में जैन दार्शनिकों की भूमिका। हाँ, तो मैं इसमें मुख्य रूप से बता दूंगी कि भाषा दर्शन के क्षेत्र में जैन दार्शनिकों का क्या योगदान है, क्या उन्होंने काम किया हुआ है। तो भाषा तत्व तथा भाषा दर्शन की परंपरा प्राचीन काल से ही चली आ रही है। भाषा तथा उसके अर्थ विश्लेषण का आरंभ वैदिक मंत्रों एवं श्रुतियों के रक्षार्थ ब्राह्मण ग्रंथों में हमें दृष्टिगत होता है और यही परंपरा उत्तरोत्तर विकसित होती हुई पाणिनि पतंजलि के ग्रंथों में विकसित हुई है। भाषा दर्शन के क्षेत्र में मीमांसकों और वैयाकरणों ने भाषा संबंधी विभिन्न समस्याओं पर प्रौढ़ ग्रंथों की रचना तो की है, लेकिन जैन और बौद्ध विचारक भी भाषा दर्शन संबंधी अनेक समस्याओं पर अपनी परंपरा के प्रेक्ष्य में बहुत गंभीर विचार किए हैं। बौद्धों का अपोहवाद का सिद्धांत इस दिशा में गंभीर प्रयत्न माना जा सकता है। भाषा दर्शन संबंधी चिंतन की परंपरा में जैन दर्शन में प्राचीन जैनागम प्रज्ञापना सूत्र है। उसमें भाषा की उत्पत्ति कैसे होती है, इसकी व्यापकता क्या है, भाषाई कथनों का सत्यता से क्या संबंध है, इसकी विस्तार से चर्चा उपलब्ध होती है। साथ ही और भी भाषा दर्शन के जो विषय हैं, शब्दार्थ संबंध, शब्द की वाच्यता का प्रश्न आदि पे गंभीरता पूर्वक विचार किया गया है। भाषा दर्शन के क्षेत्र में जैन दार्शनिकों की भूमिका को समझने के लिए थोड़ा ऐतिहासिक दृष्टि से देखने पर हमें पता चल सकता है। तो आगम युग के जो जैन दर्शन के ग्रंथ हैं, उसमें जो महावीर जी ने व्याख्यात्मक उपदेश दिए थे, उन्हीं उपदेशों को उनके प्रधान शिष्यों ने संग्रहित किया, जो कि आगम कहलाए। उसमें आगम युग के दार्शनिक साहित्य के संबंध में दार्शनिक साहित्य में मुख्य रूप से तत्व मीमांसा और आचार मीमांसा की चर्चा है। जहां तक भाषा दर्शन विषयक सामग्री का प्रश्न है, तो भाषा दर्शन विषयक सिद्धांतों के बीज हमें आगम ग्रंथों में दिखने लगते हैं, जो कि क्रमशः आगे के युगों में विकसित होते हैं। प्राचीन जैनागम भगवती सूत्र के प्रथम शतक के प्रथम उद्देशक में भाषा विश्लेषण संबंधी एक संदर्भ प्राप्त होता है। महावीर के काल से ही प्रथम संघवेद भाषा विश्लेषण को लेकर ही हुआ। भगवान महावीर और उनके भागिने जमाली के मध्य जो विवाद चला उसका आधार भाषा विश्लेषण ही था। इसके अतिरिक्त आचारांग सूत्र का भाषा विवेक, स्थानांग सूत्र में नए ज्ञान प्रमाण की चर्चा, अनुयोग द्वार में शाब्दबोध प्रक्रिया है, नंदी सूत्र में जैन दृष्टि से ज्ञान चर्चा करने वाली उत्तम कृति है, और प्रज्ञापना सूत्र है, दशवैकालिक सूत्र। दिगंबर संप्रदाय के ग्रंथों में भी भाषा दर्शन संबंधी सामग्री मिलती है। पंचास्तिकाय में सप्तभंगी, नए पदार्थ, तत्व आदि विषयों पे सफल लेखनी उनकी चली है। और तत्वार्थ सूत्र भी इसी युग का है। इसके रचयिता उमा स्वाति हैं, जिसमें उन्होंने तत्वार्थ सूत्र का श्वेतंबर विद्वान ऐसा मानते हैं कि वाचक उमा स्वाति ने स्वयं इस पर भाष्य लिखा। इस प्रकार आगम युग के दार्शनिक साहित्य के परिशीलन से स्पष्ट होता है कि इस युग के साहित्य में मुख्यतः तत्व मीमांसा और आचार मीमांसा को ही महत्व दिया गया, परंतु भाषा दर्शन संबंधी सिद्धांतों का भी संकेत प्राप्त होता है, जो कि आगे के युगों में जिनका विकास होता है। और दूसरा युग अनेकांत स्थापन युग है। इस काल में सिद्धसेन और समंतभद्र हुए। सिद्धसेन ने सन्मति तर्क और समंतभद्र ने आप्त मीमांसा की रचना की और अनेकांतवाद की स्थापना की। और मल्लवादी का द्वादशार्णय चक्र है। ये भी दार्शनिक ग्रंथों में अद्भुत ग्रंथ है। इसमें अनेक दार्शनिक मतवादों की समीक्षा कर अनेकांत की स्थापना की गई है। भाषा दर्शन की दृष्टि से इस युग की ज्ञान मीमांसीय अवधारणा के अंतर्गत नए की अवधारणा को लिया जा सकता है। जैन अभिमत नए विचार भाषाई अभिव्यक्ति का विशेष प्रारूप है। वाच्यार्थ निर्धारण हेतु नए का सिद्धांत जैन दर्शन की अपनी विशेषता है। और प्रमाण व्यवस्था युग जो है उसमें मीमांसक कुमारिल भट्ट और नैयायिक उद्योतकर और बौद्ध दर्शन के खंडन में जैन दार्शनिकों ने अपने ग्रंथों की रचना की थी। इस काल में मुख्य रूप से खंडन मंडन की प्रवृत्ति प्रधान रूप से रही थी और भाषा दर्शन संबंधी सामग्री खोज करने पर इस युग में शब्द प्रमाण की चर्चा में भाषा दर्शन संबंधी प्रचुर सामग्री उपलब्ध होती है। अतः भाषा दर्शन की दृष्टि से प्रमाण व्यवस्था युग का दार्शनिक साहित्य भी विशेष उपयोगी सिद्ध होता है। फिर नव्य न्याय युग में भी यशोविशेष जी हुए हैं, जिन्होंने जैन तर्क भाषा और ज्ञान बिंदु की रचना की है। और भाषा दर्शन की इस दृष्टि से यशोविशेष जी द्वारा लिखित भाषा रहस्य प्रकरण इस युग की कृति है। इस प्रकार समस्त जैन दार्शनिक साहित्य का परिशीलन करने से स्पष्ट होता है कि भाषा दर्शन के क्षेत्र में जैन चिंतक आगम युग से ही प्रयत्नशील रहे हैं। आगम युग के साहित्य का प्रमुख विषय तत्व मीमांसा ही रहा है, परंतु तत्व मीमांसाई प्रश्नों में भाषा विश्लेषण जैसे गंभीर विषयों पर चिंतन हमें भगवती सूत्र में ही प्राप्त हो जाता है। पुनः दार्शनिक विकास के साथ साथ ईसा की प्रथम शताब्दी से ज्ञान मीमांसा के अंतर्गत भाषा दर्शन संबंधी चिंतन प्राप्त होता है। यह सत्य है कि भाषा दर्शन के व्याकरण प्रस्थान ने शब्द के स्वरूप के साथ साथ भाषा दर्शन की अनेक समस्याओं पर गंभीरता से चर्चा की है। जहां तक जैन दार्शनिकों ने भाषा चिंतन का प्रश्न है, उन्होंने शब्द की नित्यता, शब्दार्थ संबंध आदि विषयों पर मीमांसकों एवं वैयाकरणों के बाद ही प्रवेश किया हो, परंतु सत्ता की वाच्यता तथा कथन की सत्यता आदि भाषा दर्शन संबंधी विषयों पर प्राचीन जैनागमों में ही प्रकाश डाला गया है। शब्द की वाच्यता सामर्थ्य का प्रश्न आचारांग में उपलब्ध है। स्थानांक के 10वें स्थानक में शब्द के प्रकार, प्रज्ञापना सूत्र, भगवती सूत्र, प्रश्न व्याकरण सूत्र में भाषा दर्शन संबंधी चर्चाएं उपलब्ध हैं। इन सभी आगमों में उपलब्ध सामग्री को जैनों के भाषा दर्शन का प्रमुख आधार माना जा सकता है। पुनः नए एवं निक्षेप की अवधारणाएं भी जैन आगमों में उपलब्ध हैं। इन अवधारणाओं का उद्देश्य वक्ता के आशय को समझाना है। यह सभी विषय भाषा दर्शन से संबंधित है। इसी प्रकार पूज्यपाद माणिक्यनंदी, प्रभाचंद्र आदि जैन दार्शनिकों ने क्रमशः सर्वार्थ सिद्धि, तत्वार्थ वार्तिक, प्रमेय कमल मार्तंड, न्याय कुमुद चंद्र आदि ग्रंथों में शब्द का स्वरूप, शब्दार्थ संबंध, शब्द के वाच्यत्व का प्रश्न आदि पे गंभीरता से विचार किया है। जैन आगमों में संकेतित भाषा दर्शन संबंधी विषय जैन न्याय के ग्रंथों में क्रमशः विकसित होते गए। इस प्रकार भाषा दर्शन के क्षेत्र में जैन दार्शनिकों के अवदान को महत्वपूर्ण माना जा सकता है। धन्यवाद।
Okay, question very good. Next, I request Smita Bhomnik, present subject.
Sir, mine.
Article is regeneration of the ancient Indian values in the modern society.
Namaskar and a very good afternoon to all of you. Before starting my paper, I would like to convey my heartiest thanks and regards to the respected chairperson, to the organizing body of this seminar, and to all the scholars who are present here. I would like to say that my topic is not something new. This topic, some of these portions have already been discussed in the morning session. I have very little knowledge about Vedas, Upanishads, and the values laid in the Vedas, in the Upanishads. If I make any mistake, please do rectify me and help me to enrich myself. The grand quest for knowledge that mankind has nurtured. Yes. The title of my paper is Regeneration of the Ancient Indian Values in the Modern Society. The grand quest for knowledge that mankind has nurtured ever since the dawn of human thought finds a unique and inspirational source of its fulfillment and satisfaction in the ancient wisdom of India. The root of such wisdom may be traced back to the ancient scriptures of the Vedas and the Upanishads that constitute the very foundation of the classical Indian philosophy, literature, ethics, as well as religion. We know that the Vedas and the Upanishads seek to enlighten human beings regarding the deepest truths of reality and existence. But their aim is not mere satisfaction of the intellectual quest of man. They are imbued with a mission to fulfill the perennial human desire for attaining a value-oriented life, a life of excellence and perfection. And this becomes clear as we find that they recognize certain values and ideals, the cultivation of which would improve the inner quality of human life and would lead to the moral and spiritual development of the individual as well as the society. For instance, the Vedas focus upon the values like Satya, truth, Taposh, penance, Brahmacharya, celibacy, Shraddha, honor, liberality, hospitality, friendship, non-cheating and non-violence. Similarly, the Upanishads also recognize the values of Satya, truth, Yogya, sacrifice, Taposh, penance, Dan, liberality, Adhyayan, study of the Vedas, self-control, right dealing, compassion, etc. Now, the present paper humbly wishes to point out the implications and the relevance of these values in the contemporary life of mankind to deal with the social and moral crisis that humanity is faced with today, not only in our country, but in the entire world. For instance, today, if we really want to fight against the injustice and corruption that are gradually engulfing our life, I feel that we should sincerely try to revive the values of truth and justice in our life. We know that truth has been admitted as one of the principal grounds or basis of dharma in our Hindu Shastras, and the search for truth, Satyanusandhan, has been recognized as one of the fundamental objectives of human life. Now, the search for truth implies an attempt to unravel the real nature of things beyond their phenomenal appearances. But this sounds to be something idealistic and utopian in our practical life. However, one of the ways by which we may follow truth in our practical life is, instead of accepting things dogmatically in our daily affairs, we should try to judge them in the light of our own reasoning. While doing so, we should at least try to be truthful in our thoughts, words, and deeds. And we should try to avoid doing such things or saying such things which would be detrimental or harmful for the growth of the individual and the society. The observation of truth would then re-establish the virtues of honesty and justice. Again, we find that in the Indian tradition, it is the Vedic cosmic principle of Ritu which also implies the eternal moral order that governs the entire universe. Ritu has been conceived as the ultimate foundation of morality, and truth is one of its most intrinsic content. Now, the Vedas upholds that everyone must follow the path of Ritu. Why? Because deviation from it would affect universal peace and harmony. Now, this concern for global peace is something that has been duly emphasized in the Vedas, and it is very much relevant today. Considering the increasing violence, hatred, terrorism that we are noticing in every sphere of our life, we feel that there is a dire need to propagate and practice the virtues of non-violence, peace, tolerance, universal brotherhood, and unity within mankind. We know, we have already heard, and we know that the Buddhist and the Jaina traditions are well known. They have laid great emphasis on the observation of peace and non-violence. The Rig Veda and the Atharva Veda are well known for the advocacy of universal brotherhood, equality of humankind, and world fraternity. Besides, the Advaita Vedantic principle of the identity of every individual self with that of Brahman, and thereby with the self of every other beings, lays down the spiritual basis of unity and cooperation within mankind. We find that the Vedic seers also suggest some specific ways of self-control, the practice of which is again something very much necessary today to prevent ourselves and our society from being gradually destroyed with the increasing material cravings, aggressive desires, and lust for money and power, which are aggravating day by day. The observation of the virtues of non-stealing, non-possession, and celibacy are the various means to the self-control. I would like to mention that non-stealing does not merely mean not to covet others' possession without permission. In a broader sense, it means that we should always be satisfied with what we already have and should not hanker after others' possession. Similarly, non-possession does not mean renunciation of everything that one possesses. It rather means not to possess things beyond necessity. Hence, both of these virtues emphasize upon the importance of maintaining simplicity in human life. Again, the Vedic cosmic principle of the Vedic concept of yogya or sacrifice has also have great social and moral significance. The yogya, it is a broad concept, but the yogya as described in the Vedas is a collective act which is to be performed by many individuals, and its result is also to be enjoyed collectively in a distributive manner. The essence of yogya is sacrifice of one's narrow self or the ego and the renunciation of self-interest. Now we may say that in our practical life it implies that all our acts should be performed in a collective manner, renouncing each other's self-interest for the good and well-being of every individual in the society. It thus stands for the values of self-sacrifice, benevolence, lokoshangraho, mutual and cooperative existence, all of which, the regeneration of which would help to prevent the individuals, nations, and the world at large from being separated and divided from one another. But the question that repeatedly comes in our mind, how can we implement these values in our life? Yes, we cannot implement them exactly in the way they have been laid down in the Indian tradition. With some renovation, reinterpretation, we should try to implement them in our life. And perhaps we can overcome the moral and spiritual crisis through which we are going at present. And let us thus stand united with our hearts full of hopes for attaining a life of unity and perfection. And with this aspiration, we may utter the Upanishadic verse, Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityur ma amritam gamaya. Thank you for your kind and patient listening.
Smita, question now. One paper is remaining. Prakash, I request Prakash Bobika.
Yes.
Yeah, present it. We are only 5 minutes maximum.
5 minutes, madam. Thank you, madam. Good afternoon, everybody. Indian ancient Smritis, Manusmriti, modern world. Ancient Indian scripts, Smritis have a big place in Sanskrit literature and tradition. These scripts preaches moral from human enlightenment and for upright living. Manusmriti, Gautama Smriti, Shankar Smriti, Parashara Smriti are eminent among numerous ancient Smritis. The traditions and the religious formalities as shown in these Smritis are being followed from thousands of years. Some of the aspects told in Manusmriti about modern scientists, political, social, cultural, environmental pave way for human enlightenment and development. Manusmriti has 12 chapters containing 2684 shlokas. These shlokas comprise with invaluable wisdom, in which I mentioned below some of them. Meditation enhances longevity of life and wisdom. ऋषयो दीर्घसंध्यत्वा दीर्घमायुर्वाप्युः प्रज्ञायशश्च कीर्तिं च ब्रह्मवर्चसमेव च. Man has to wake up from sleep before dawn and has to complete ablution, both etc., and has to perform pre-dawn prayer and has to recite Gayatri mantra. Our ancestors and saints used to recite this mantra every day. That is why they got longevity of life, wisdom and light. The modern doctors, psychologists insist on performing yoga because it gives peace of mind, protection from diseases, and thus it is proved that yoga gives us wisdom, longevity of life. Crazy for women other than wife, lessness, lifespan. Nahi drusham anayushyam loke kinchana vidyate yadrusham purushasyeva paradharopi sevanam. Having conjugal relation with the wife of other man is unethical. This relation causes life health to both man and woman and lessness lifespan. So Manusmriti teaches us about attachment with one's wife only. This has been proved by doctors and scientists today that unethical sexual relations causes dangerous diseases like AIDS. We should respect women. Yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devataha yatraitastu na pujyante sarvas tatra phalakriyaha parapatni tu yastri syad dasambadha chayonitaha tambruyad bhavatityevam subhago bhagniti cha. Where women are respected, their gods are worshipped. Worshipping in honor of deities with yajna yaga without respecting women is useless. In the same way, if women are graved, the person who are responsible for her grave will be done. Man should treat other women with great respect, addressing them sister. In this way we can control the atrocities on women. Then only respectable society is possible. Women are dependent and not independent. Balye pitur vase tishte tat panigrahasya yavvane putranam bhartari prete na bhavet stri swatantratam. Arakshita gruhe ruddha purushairapta karibihi atmana yastu rakshayes sa surakshitaha. Woman in her childhood takes security in father or parents in youth from husband. After the death of husband or in old age from son, she takes security. In this way, it is better to lead under someone's security rather than independent. It is not possible to provide security to women always, so they should be in position to protect themselves. Only thus women can be with safety. So they should be self-protected. When women can roam at midnight without fear, then only we get real independence. The Gandhiji's words true.
Go through all the lines.
Okay, death sentence for rapists. In Manusmriti told, Yo kamam dushayet kanyam sadyo vadamarhati. And thieves should punished severely. Human beings should carry out from their weaknesses. And no marriage should take place between blood relatives. Personal and environmental neatness we should take. Overeating should not be done, let it cause diseases. Man becomes wellness when he is along with women. Children are influenced by parents. Teachers should not punish disciples, not to sleep under the shade of the trees during night. रात्रौ च वृक्षमूलानि दूरतः परिवर्जयेत्. एतानि सर्वाणि शास्त्रीय सामाजिक विषयाः अत्र अस्ति. समयः नास्ति. तादृशं समापयामि. धन्यवादाः.
Thank you, Prakash. In this session,
Thank you, madam.
we have got 8 papers. One paper is not, is very authentic and research-oriented paper. I'm not going to conclusion or any explanation about this paper. And next paper is the Jagdish Kotigiri. It's a very interesting paper. I have gathered so many knowledge about Bhupen Hazarika. It's very on non-violent and folk songs. And he has already attached to the Buddhism, that means the non-violence, no caste and creed, no another, is very interesting paper. I'm not going to details more. And then the Narayan Datta Mishra is the Vikramavurshi of Pralabdhan Sanskriti. About it is also the authentic and interesting paper. Next paper number 4 is is also Shahanaz Begum, very interesting and very simple, and is the philosophy and psychology, all the mix of the paper. It's very nice paper, Jhumpa Lahiri's interpretation of melodies. And next, number 5, already the Dr. Shukla is on Pandulipi, I think. Yeah. And then is the number 6, Patsuna Rani Dubey, is the Bhasha, about Bhasha Chintan. I'm going to discussion about this. Number 7 is the Sushmita Bhaumik, is the ancient Indian values. She has discussed orally very nicely and simple English. And number 8 is the Prakash Gurikar, Manushriti, Modern World. Thank you all of you to listen me patiently. We can stop today and
We have really the duty to thank you.
Okay. So many papers, 8 papers we have completed.
It is an achievement. Madam, with your permission, I want to announce one thing which has been whispered into my ear by Dr. Ramanath Pandey. All of you are requested to go downstairs to the place where food is being served. It is his request.
Thank you, sir.
It is not my request, so I don't want.
Thank you for conveying the message.
Yes, come. Thank you, madam.